The warning bells have sounded. The housing bubble in Canada has exploded, dragging down the entire economy in its wake.
It's really hard, and it is imposing real pain on a lot of Canadians and Canadian families.
Here in Canada, the country's housing agency is calling attention to a potential storm of another kind.
The Ponzi scheme has resulted in a scarcity of homes, and the average Canadian can't even think of having a roof over their head. Home loans? Is it a phrase that a common man can say? No, because interest rates have skyrocketed. And just when a bit of hope emerged with the post-COVID recovery, a recent prediction from the OECD, a coalition of countries, indicates that Canada's economy will grow at a slower pace than similar nations for the next 30 years. It is the announcement of something horrific for Canada, as the economy is on the brink of a collapse. So stay with us as we take a closer look at how Canada's economy is going downhill. Canada's economic downfall. If anyone asks you what is the one core problem of Canada's economy, the simplest answer is productivity. Yes, the country isn't expanding. Economists would say that how much work gets done, or productivity, is what really makes a country rich. It's like counting how much stuff an economy makes for each worker. The more stuff each worker makes, the richer the country becomes. But Canada's productivity has gotten stuck. A while back, Canadians were just as productive as Americans. But now, the average American worker gets around 40% more done than the average Canadian worker. This means Canadians end up earning less than Americans. In the US, the typical person's salary is about $57,000 in US dollars, while in Canada, it's less, about $44,000 in US dollars. So why is this going on? To put it simply, in the last few decades, Canadians switched from making things to mostly buying and selling houses. Canada changed its focus from using its resources to a situation where people keep buying and selling houses for more and more money, sort of like a game, or like a Ponzi scheme. But the housing bubble had been looming for years, ready to burst at any given moment. Ready to pop, the Canadian housing bubble. The story started during the global financial crisis of 2008 and 2009. Unlike the US and British housing markets, Canada's housing market remained intact. The country's stable banks didn't require bailouts. However, when central banks worldwide lowered interest rates to stimulate economies, Canada's Bank of Canada followed suit. Interest rates dropped dramatically, leading to a surge in home prices as mortgages became cheap to borrow. With 70% of Canadians owning homes, a sense of affluence and invulnerability spread. The US housing crash seemed distant, fostering a feeling of immunity. Buoyed by newfound wealth, Canadians began speculating on housing, especially in key cities like Toronto and Vancouver, where prices soared annually. It resembled a potential housing bubble, which, unlike the US, never popped. In 2014, a new phase unfolded as global oil prices dropped sharply, hurting Canada's major exports. This led to reduced investment in the oil industry and a shift toward real estate trading. With high immigration, demand for housing grew, redirecting funds from business investment to housing construction. Canadian households diverted wealth from stock markets to home purchases, reducing funds for new businesses. This imbalance impacted Canada's economic growth. Limited investment stifled new business creation, with US firms purchasing what few emerged. Compared to the US, Canada's per-worker investment lagged, hindering productivity. Older equipment and fewer resources resulted in lower output, causing Canada to fall behind. Moreover, housing costs soared, tripling since 2010 despite stagnant earnings. While beneficial for existing homeowners, it proved a challenge for young individuals striving to enter the housing market. But unfortunately, this complex economic dance continues to shape Canada's destiny. And the situation has gotten much worse since the COVID-19 pandemic. But before moving any further, we would like you to subscribe to our channel for more updates. Post-pandemic world, rising interest rates. In the pandemic, the Bank of Canada once again brought interest rates down to zero. Canadians rushed to borrow money to buy houses faster than ever. Between 2020 and 2022, house prices in Canada shot up by 50%. Inflation followed, leading the Bank of Canada to raise interest rates like other central banks worldwide. This hit Canada's housing market hard. Unlike the US, where you can lock in a mortgage rate for 30 years, in Canada, mortgages last 5 years and then need to be renewed at a new rate. You can pick a fixed rate for those 5 years or a variable rate that changes with the economy. During the pandemic, variable rates were lower than fixed rates, so many chose them. About a third of Canadians have variable rate mortgages, which can go up or down every month. When the Bank of Canada raised rates, a third of Canadian mortgages got more expensive instantly. Plus, the remaining fixed-rate mortgages all end within 5 years, pushing even those borrowers to refinance with much higher rates. This squeezed Canadian consumers, causing panic. To prevent a US-style housing crash, Canada's banks found an innovative solution. They extended the time to pay off mortgages, lowering monthly payments but greatly prolonging mortgage terms. Because borrowing amounts are so high, many Canadians now face mortgages lasting 70, 80, or even 90 years. This is not a joke, it's the reality today. Owning a home has turned into enduring near-permanent debt. All of this was triggered by a rise in interest rates. Meanwhile, first-time buyers find it impossible to afford homes due to high prices and rates. People are still buying houses, but most existing homeowners are leveraging their wealth to buy more properties. Corporations are also buying homes, often outbidding families. Recent analysis shows that considering current prices and rates, only 10% of Canadians can truly afford a home. Dearth of houses. Canada's homeownership rate is slipping from 70 to 66.5 due to a housing squeeze. This is compounded by a housing shortage linked to rapid population growth. Despite an economy struggling to keep up, Canada welcomes around 1 million new residents each year. Healthcare and housing sectors are particularly strained, with a per capita recession exacerbating economic challenges. The construction workforce shortage adds to the housing crunch, as Canada's building capacity falls short of the required demand. Is the lack of political will to address the housing problem even more disheartening? In a country with 4 major political parties, or 5, counting the Bloc Québécois, is there any concrete plan to significantly increase housing supply? Does the high cost of land and construction make it evident that the government lacks the necessary funds to resolve this issue? Would building 5.5 million homes require borrowing hundreds of billions of dollars, a financial burden too heavy to bear given current interest rates? These are some of the questions that the Canadians are asking right now. If you like the video, do subscribe to our channel, and if you want to know why the US real estate is headed for a Chinese-style collapse, watch our video.